The black sea of space stretched forever. Cold stars burned like silent watchers. Among them drifted a small broken pod. Its metal walls were scratched, cracked, and barely holding together. Inside sat a young alien girl, no older than a human, child of 10 years. Her eyes were large, silver blue, shining with fear and tears. Her thin hands clutched a small glowing crystal pressed tight against her chest. She did not understand why her people had done this. She only remembered the cold voices of the council. They had called her weak. They had called her a burden. In her world, there was no place for weakness. Children who could not fight, who could not kill, were cast away. So they placed her in the pod, sealed it shut, and sent her into the dark. Her own kind had thrown her away. They left her to die where no one would hear her cries. Her breath fogged against the thin glass window. She whispered words in her language, soft and broken. "Father, please, I need a father." But no father came, only silence answered. Her heart ached like a wound. She did not want to be strong like them. She only wanted someone to hold her, someone to say she mattered. Far away, the blue planet of Earth turned slowly in the light of its star. From the surface, humans launched satellites and ships into the skies. One of those ships, the Explorer 2, carried a small crew of astronauts. They were scanning the edges of orbit when the signal appeared. At first it was faint, a weak cry of distress bouncing across space. The computers caught it, alarms flashed, and the crew turned toward the unknown. Captain Harris leaned over the console, frowning at the data. "It's no human signal," said the navigator. "Could be a trap," muttered another. But the signal kept repeating, slow and desperate, not coded, not clever, just raw and broken. "Help me," it seemed to say. Again and again, the cry filled the cabin. The crew grew quiet, their eyes meeting. Something in the sound felt real, not like a machine, but like a child crying alone. "Plot a course," Harris ordered, though his voice was tight. They followed the signal until the pod appeared on the screen, a tiny metal shell drifting in the void. Its surface was cracked, its engines dead. Inside, a faint heat signature flickered. The crew stared, silence thick in the cabin. "Something's alive in there," whispered the navigator. Harris nodded slowly, his jaw set. "Prepare for retrieval," he said. The docking was slow and tense. Metal arms reached out, pulled the pod toward the ship. When the hatch opened, a sharp hiss of air escaped. The crew held their breath as the light cut through the darkness inside. And there she was, the alien girl curled up, her face streaked with tears. Her eyes widened as she saw them, her body trembling. For a moment, no one moved. The humans stared at her. She stared back. She looked fragile, small, nothing like the monsters of human nightmares. Then she whispered, her voice weak but clear enough to understand. "Father, please, Father." The word cut through the silence like a blade. The crew exchanged glances, confusion and unease mixing. Why would an alien call for a father? Why would she look at them with such pleading eyes? Captain Harris stepped forward slowly. He crouched near the pod, his helmet reflecting her frightened face. "It's all right," he said softly, though she could not know his words. Still, his tone, his calm voice, made her blink. For the first time in endless darkness, she felt hope. Her small hand reached out, trembling. It hovered in the air between them. Harris hesitated, then extended his own hand toward her. Their fingers nearly touched, separated only by the thin layer of his glove. In that moment, the vast gulf between human and alien shrank. It was not Earth meeting a stranger. It was a child meeting a father. Behind Harris, the crew shifted nervously. "Sir, we don't know what she is," one whispered. "She could be dangerous," another added. But Harris did not move away. He only kept his gaze locked on her tearful eyes, and the girl, thrown away by her own kind, whispered once more, "Father." The pod door hissed open wider. Cold air spilled into the Explorer 2's docking bay. The girl's thin frame shook. As she tried to move, her legs were weak, her skin pale under the strange light. She pressed the glowing crystal tighter against her chest. As if it was her last piece of safety, the astronauts kept their distance. Their helmets gleamed in the sterile light, hiding their faces. They whispered through radios, nervous and uncertain. "What if she's dangerous?" said one voice. "What if she's sick?" said another. But none of them stepped forward. Only Captain Harris moved closer, his eyes steady. The girl blinked up at him, her lips trembled, forming broken words. She repeated what she had said before. "Father, please, a father." Her voice cracked like glass, filled with pain and fear. She did not beg for food, she did not beg for water. She begged for something deeper, something no machine could give. A father. Harris felt a weight in his chest. It was the same weight he had carried since losing his own daughter years ago, a pain he had buried under duty. Now, looking at the alien girl, that wound opened again, not with despair, but with a strange, fierce need to protect. "Easy." Harris said, kneeling lower. He slowly reached out a hand, his glove open, showing no weapon. The girl flinched, her eyes darting to the others. But when her gaze returned to him, she saw no anger, no cruelty. Only warmth hidden behind glass. She stretched out her trembling fingers, touching his glove. Her hand was cold, almost weightless, yet the contact made the whole room go still, sir, said one crew member sharply. "This is against protocol, we don't even know what she is." Harris turned his head slightly, his voice calm but firm. "She's a child," he said. Those 3 words silenced the room. The girl tried to stand, but her legs buckled. Harris caught her before she fell. Her small frame pressed against his suit. She felt fragile, like she might break with one wrong move, but she clung to him anyway, holding tight as though he was the only thing left in the universe. The others shifted uneasily, watching this strange bond form. "She doesn't belong here," one muttered, but another whispered almost against his own will. "She looks scared." The girl's eyes darted around the ship. Bright lights, metal walls, faces hidden behind helmets. Everything was strange. Everything was terrifying. She buried her face against Harris's chest plate. He rested a hand gently against her back. "You're safe now," he said softly. She didn't know the words, but she felt the meaning. Hours later, the Explorer 2 sent a coded message back to Earth Command. "Unknown life form recovered." The report read, "Subject appears juvenile. Non-hostile, requesting immediate orders." But the humans on Earth were slow to answer. Debates sparked in the control rooms and government halls. Some shouted it was too risky. Others whispered this was history in the making. Yet far away in the quiet ship, none of that mattered. All that mattered was the way the alien girl refused to let go of Harris's hand. When food was offered, she shook her head. When water was given, she only sipped once, but when Harris sat beside her, she leaned close. Her voice was small. "Broken, father," she whispered again. The crew listened in silence, their doubts twisting into something else. Curiosity, pity, maybe even respect. That night, as the Explorer drifted in orbit, Harris sat near her pod. He removed his helmet, so she could see his face. The girl gasped softly, staring at his human features. Wrinkles, scars, tired eyes. To her, he looked nothing like her kind. And yet, when he smiled, she saw something she had never seen before. Kindness. She touched his cheek with one trembling hand. He did not pull away. Instead, he closed his eyes, letting her feel his warmth. And in that moment, the line between human and alien blurred. No longer a rescue mission, no longer a protocol decision. It was something far simpler, a lost child reaching out, and a man who could not turn away. But beyond the Explorer in the silent dark, shadows stirred. Unknown ships watched from distances too far for human eyes. Cold voices whispered across alien frequencies. "The girl lives," one said. "She should not have survived," another hissed. Their words carried hate, sharp and final. If the humans had saved her, they had made themselves enemies. Back on the ship, Harris looked at the girl who now slept beside the glowing crystal, her breathing soft, her hands finally still. For the first time since her exile, she rested in peace. He whispered into the quiet cabin, "You're not alone anymore." And though she slept, her lips curved into the smallest of smiles. The Explorer 2 floated like a silver arrow above the blue earth. Inside the ship, silence hung heavy after the rescue. The alien girl rested in a corner, wrapped in a thermal blanket. Her small hands still held the glowing crystal, never letting it go. She was weak, but her eyes stayed fixed on Captain Harris. Every time he moved, her gaze followed, like a shadow afraid to be left behind. The crew gathered in the control room, their voices low. "Command still hasn't given clear orders," said the navigator. "They're afraid." Another replied, "Afraid she's a trap, afraid she's a weapon, afraid of everything." The words hung in the air, bitter and sharp. Harris listened, arms folded, his face unreadable. "She's just a child," he said finally. But the others shook their heads. "A child of what, sir?" one asked. "A child of monsters," whispered another. The memory of her people's cruelty haunted them. They knew what the girl had told them in broken words. Her kind destroyed children who were not strong enough. Her kind threw her into the void. If they could treat their own like trash, what would they do to humans? The thought made the crew uneasy, their hearts torn between fear and pity. The message from Earth finally arrived. The voice of command crackled through the speakers, cold and firm. "Explorer 2, you are ordered to leave the life form where you found it. Do not bring it to Earth. Repeat, do not bring it to Earth." The crew froze, staring at each other. The order was clear. The choice was not. Harris clenched his fists, his jaw tight. His mind burned with conflict. He had seen her trembling hands, her desperate eyes. He had heard her voice calling "Father," again and again. How could he leave her now? How could he abandon her like the monsters who had cast her away? He walked back to the girl who sat quietly in the docking bay. When she saw him, her face lit up, weak but hopeful. She whispered the same word, the only one she had chosen to trust. "Father." The sound cut through him like fire. His heart answered before his mind could resist. He knelt beside her, resting, a hand on her thin shoulder. "They want me to leave you," he said softly. She didn't understand the words, but she saw the sorrow in his eyes. Her own eyes filled with fear, tears gathering once more. She shook her head, clutching his hand, refusing to let go. Harris felt the weight of the universe pressing down. The choice stood before him, cruel and final: obey his orders or follow his heart. The crew stood behind, him waiting. Some wanted him to obey, to avoid risk. Others, though silent, could not forget the girl's cry. It was Harris who carried the final word. He rose slowly, turning to face them all. "I will not abandon her," he said, voice steady. "She's under my protection now." The words struck like thunder. The navigator's mouth opened, then closed. The engineer looked away, conflicted. One crew member whispered, "Command will strip you of rank." Harris's reply was calm, unshaken. Better stripped of rank than stripped of humanity. The girl did not understand the debate, but when she saw Harris standing tall, she reached for his hand. He took it without hesitation, and in that simple gesture the choice was sealed. That night, while the ship drifted in the quiet dark, Harris sat with the girl at his side. She leaned against him, her small body shaking less now, her eyes heavy with exhaustion but no longer empty. "Father," she whispered again before sleep took her. The word no longer sounded like fear. It sounded like trust, but far beyond. Their view, her kind, was already moving. Their ships cut through the dark like shadows with burning hearts. They had seen the humans rescue her. They had heard whispers of her survival, and they were furious. The exile, who should have died now, lived, and worse, she had found protection among the humans. To them, it was not only weakness, it was betrayal. Back on Earth, command debated in secret rooms. Some leaders feared war, others whispered about hope. But in the small ship above Earth, only one thing mattered. The choice had been made. Harris had taken the alien girl as his own, and though the storm ahead would be fierce, he knew he would never let her be thrown away again. The explorer the Sectu cut across the dark skies, a lonely ship carrying a secret no one on Earth was ready to face. Inside, the alien girl sat quietly near the window, her silver blue eyes staring. At the endless stars, she held the glowing crystal tightly against her chest, as if it was the only piece of her life that still belonged to her. The crew avoided her, whispering when they thought she could not hear. They feared her kind, feared what she might bring. But Captain Harris did not fear her. He only watched her with quiet eyes, waiting. At first, the girl spoke very little. Her words were broken, mixed with gestures hard to understand, but slowly she began to reveal pieces of herself. Not just who she was, but what her people had done. Every word was heavy, every truth sharp as a blade. She told them her kind lived, by one law, strength. To them, kindness was weakness, mercy was disease. A child who showed tears, who reached for comfort, was seen as broken, and broken things were destroyed. Her voice shook as she explained. They throw away. The weak, she whispered, her small hands trembling, her eyes darkened with old memories. I cry, I feel, I love, so they hate me. The crew grew silent, the room thick with unease. One whispered, monsters. Under his breath, another muttered, they killed their own children. The girl hugged the crystal tighter, as if their words might crush her. Harris crouched beside her, his voice calm. You survived, he said. She shook her head slowly, her silver eyes wet with tears. No, I was not strong. They wanted me gone. Then she lifted the crystal for them to see. Its glow pulsed faintly like a small beating heart. This, she said, this is memory of my mother. Her voice cracked, the words almost too heavy for her to carry. She hide it for me. She give it before they take me. The crew leaned closer, staring at the strange crystal. Inside it swirled tiny sparks of light, almost like voices whispering. The girl pressed it close again. When I am afraid, I hear her voice, she whispered. She tell me I am not broken. The crew looked away, unable to meet her eyes. They had been ready to see her as a threat. Instead, she was only a child clinging to the last gift of a mother who dared to love. For Harris, the truth cut deeper. He remembered, his own daughter gone too soon. Her laughter now only an echo in his memory. The girl's pain mirrored his own, and the weight of his choice grew heavier. But secrets came with danger. The more she revealed, the clearer it became why her people wanted her erased. She was proof of something they feared. Proof that even among their cruel kind, love could still survive. If others learned of her, if her secret spread, her kind would be exposed. And for that they would hunt her without end. The girl lowered her head, whispering words like a confession. I am shame to them, she said. But to you, maybe I can be daughter. Her small hand reached out again, uncertain, trembling. Harris did not hesitate. He took her hand firmly. You already are, he said. Her eyes widened, tears spilling. For the first time she allowed herself a small, fragile smile, but the moment of peace did not last. The ship's alarms blared suddenly, sharp and piercing. The crew rushed to the control panels, their voices frantic. Unidentified ships approaching, shouted the navigator. Not human, muttered the engineer, pale and tense. On the screen, dark shapes slid through the stars, sleek and cold. The alien girl froze, her face draining of color. She whispered one word, a word filled with terror. Hunters! The crew exchanged fearful looks. Her kind, one breathed. They've come for her, said another. The girl clutched the crystal tight, her body shaking. They know. I live, she whispered. Her silver eyes turned to Harris, filled with pleading fear. Please, Father, don't let them take me. Harris stood tall, his face set like stone. His choice had been made once, and he would not change it now. Hold position, he ordered. The crew hesitated, caught between fear of command and loyalty to their captain, but Harris's voice cut through the chaos. She is under our protection, and I will not give her back. The girl looked up at him, her lips trembling. For the first time she believed, not just that someone had saved her, but that someone would fight for her. Her secret was no longer hers alone. It now belonged to humanity. And in the dark beyond the glass, the hunters closed in, their engines burning like the eyes of predators. The Explorer 2 shook as the alien ships drew closer, cold black shadows against the stars moving with purpose. The hunters had found what they were looking for. Inside the ship, fear spread among the crew like fire. They're hailing us. The navigator whispered. Captain Harris stood firm, his jaw tight. Put them through, he ordered. The screen lit up with the image of an alien commander. Its eyes were dark, sharp as knives, its voice cold. You have taken what does not belong to you, it hissed. That creature is a defect, a mistake. She is ours to erase. The words cut like steel, echoing through the cabin. The girl trembled, clutching her crystal, her silver blue eyes filling with tears. She pressed herself against Harris's side, whispering the same word as before. Father, Harris stepped forward, his face hard as stone. She is a child, he said firmly. She belongs to no one but herself. The alien commander's face twisted in anger. Then, you defy us, it spat. Protecting weakness makes you weak. Humans will suffer for this insult. The feed cut, leaving only static. The crew exchanged fearful glances. They'll destroy us, one muttered. They'll bring war to Earth, another whispered. The navigator turned to Harris, voice desperate. Sir, we can't fight them. We're only one ship. But Harris's eyes never left the girl, who now clung to his arm like her life depended on it. He placed a steady hand on her shoulder. We are not giving her up, he said. Not as a question, but as a fact. On Earth, the debate exploded. The images of the girl had been transmitted by accident, broadcast through secure lines that leaked into public channels. Across the planet, billions saw her face. A child, alien but frightened, holding tight to a glowing crystal, whispering for a father. The world froze in shock. Then voices rose, not in fear, but in defense. She's just a child, shouted some. She deserves a chance, said others. Crowds gathered in cities, people holding signs. Humans had seen many wars, many enemies, but never before had they seen a child thrown away like garbage by her own kind. The thought of abandoning her tore at their hearts. In homes, in schools, in streets, people spoke the same words. If no one else will protect her, we will. Command tried to calm the storm. Leaders argued in secret rooms, some fearing conflict, others sensing history in the making. But the people's voices grew. Louder, even soldiers, even pilots began to speak. If she is hunted, then she is under our protection, they said. Humanity, divided on so many things, found unity in her. Not as an alien, not as a danger, but as a daughter. Back on the Explorer 2, the crew received the message. The voice of Earth Command came through, heavy but clear. Public pressure is overwhelming. The decision has been made. Harris tensed, waiting. She stays, the voice finished. You are to protect her at all costs. She is no longer theirs. She is one of us now. The crew exhaled in disbelief. The girl blinked, not understanding the words. But when Harris knelt and repeated softly, You are safe, her lips curved into a fragile smile. For the first time, her tears were not of fear, but of relief. The alien hunters outside did not retreat. They circled, waiting, their weapons ready. They would not accept this answer. To them, mercy was weakness, but humanity had spoken. For the first time in history, mankind stood not only for itself, but for a child of another world. And in that choice, something powerful was born. The crew prepared for what was to come. Shields powered up, systems armed, outnumbered, outgunned, muttered the engineer. Still standing, Harris replied. He looked down at the girl who now sat between them, crystal glowing faintly in her hands. Her voice was small, but steady. Family, she whispered. Harris nodded, his eyes burning with fire. Yes, he said, family. Across Earth, millions repeated the word, not as strangers divided by nations, but as one species, one voice. If the hunters wanted to erase her, they would have to erase humanity first, and humanity would not go quietly. In the dark of space, the hunters prepared their attack, but inside the Explorer 2, something far stronger than fear filled the cabin. It was not just courage, not just defiance. It was love, a bond that her people had called weakness, but to humanity it was strength, and it was this strength that would answer. The Explorer 2 drifted in silent orbit, surrounded by hunters waiting for the order to strike. Inside, the crew worked, with quiet urgency, tension heavy in the air. Yet in the middle of that storm, a fragile calm grew between the alien girl and Captain Harris. She stayed close to him always, as if afraid the stars themselves might take him away. When she slept, she clutched the glowing crystal. But when she woke, she reached for his hand. It was a habit, small and simple, but it tied them together. The crew noticed the change. At first, they had seen her only as a threat, a burden, or a spark for war. Now they saw something else. They saw a child learning to smile. They saw the way she laughed softly when Harris showed her small tricks with the tools. They saw how she tilted her head curiously when listening to Earth music on the ship's speakers. Each day her fear faded, replaced with wonder. And with every moment, the bond between her and Harris grew stronger. One evening, Harris found her in the observation deck, staring at Earth, her silver blue eyes wide, reflecting the glow of the planet below. She pointed at it, her voice uncertain. Home, she whispered, as if testing the word. Harris stood beside her, his voice gentle. Yes, home, he said. She pressed her hands to the glass, as though she could feel the warmth of the world waiting below. Her lips trembled, and she whispered, I never had home. The words struck deep. Harris remembered his own daughter's laughter echoing in the halls of a house now empty. He felt the ache of loss, but also the spark of something new. Perhaps this broken child had been sent not only to be saved, but to heal wounds both hers and his. He rested a hand on her shoulder, steady and firm. You do now, he said. Her eyes widened, shining with tears, and she pressed her small forehead against his arm. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe it was true. But the hunters did not rest. Their ships stalked the Explorer 2, weapons ready, waiting for weakness. The crew lived with the constant shadow of danger. Every alarm, every flicker of light could mean death. Yet the girl never let go of Harris. She followed him through the ship, watching, listening, learning. She asked questions in broken words. What is this, she would say, pointing at wires. Why music? She asked, tilting her head at the speakers. Her curiosity was endless, and her laughter was soft but real. The crew, hardened by space, found themselves smiling with her. Against all odds, she brought warmth into the cold steel walls. One night, when the ship was quiet, Harris found her awake, sitting alone. The crystal glowed faintly in her hands, casting light across her face. She looked at him, her eyes uncertain. Why, you stay? She asked softly. Others leave me. Why you not leave? Harris knelt beside her, his voice low and steady. Because you deserve better, he said. You deserve to be loved. She stared at him, her lips trembling. The word was strange to her, but it carried weight. Love, she whispered as if it was magic. She held the crystal close, then pressed it gently into his hands. This memory of my mother. Now you. Harris froze, feeling the weight of the gift. He shook his head, trying to give it back, but she pushed it into his hands firmly, her silver eyes burning. You are father now, she said. The crew, watching quietly from the shadows, felt the power of her words. It was no longer a question, no longer a wish. It was truth, sealed in that moment. The bond between them became more than survival, more than protection. It became family, forged not by blood but by choice. And that choice carried strength her kind had never understood. They had thrown her away because she felt, because she cared. But now those same feelings made her stronger than any of them. And with humanity beside her, she was no longer weak. The hunters outside prepared for their final strike. Their commanders spoke in cold voices. She must be destroyed, they hissed. She carries shame, and shame cannot live. But inside the Explorer too, shame had turned to pride, fear had turned to hope, and a lost child had become a daughter. Harris sat beside her as alarms began to sound. The crew scrambled to their stations, weapons charging, shields rising. The girl clutched his hand, her voice small but firm. "Father," she whispered. He squeezed her hand back, his voice steady even as danger closed in. "You are not alone," he said. Her heart, once broken, now beat strong. For the first time, she did not face the hunters as prey. She faced them as family. And behind her stood not just Harris, not just one crew, but all of humanity, ready to answer. The void outside the Explorer 2 burned with light as the hunters moved in. Their ship slid across the stars like shadows with blades. Weapons charged, engines roared, silence filled with the promise of death. Inside the human ship, alarms screamed, red lights flashing across steel walls. The crew braced themselves, hands shaking but spirit steady. They were outnumbered, outgunned, yet not broken. The alien girl stood at the center of the cabin, clutching Harris's hand. Her silver blue eyes shone not with fear this time, but with defiance. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "They come to erase me." Harris crouched beside her, his voice low and firm. "They'll have to erase us all first." The first strike came without warning. A beam of searing light smashed against the Explorer's shields. The ship rattled, metal groaned, sparks flew across the deck. "Shields. Holding," shouted the engineer. "Not for long," warned the navigator. Another blast followed, shaking the ship like a toy in the jaws of a beast. The girl stumbled. Harris caught her, steadying her as the crew fought to keep control. The hunters hailed them once more, voices filled with hate. "Give us the defect and we will let you live," they hissed. "She is nothing, she is shame. She is weakness." Harris's reply was sharp as a blade. "She is ours," he said. "She is family." The crew echoed his words, their voices rising as one. "Family," they repeated. And across Earth, where millions watched the live feed broadcast without filter, the world shouted the same. Family, humanity had chosen, and their choice was unshakable. The alien commander snarled, its dark eyes blazing. "Then you will all die," it declared. The hunters fired again, beams tearing at the shields, shaking the Explorer to its core. But humanity had something the hunters did not understand. Not weapons, not strength, but unity. The crew worked together, voices sharp, hands steady, systems rerouted, shields reinforced, weapons armed. Against impossible odds, they refused to fall. The girl pressed her glowing crystal against the console. The device pulsed with light, spreading energy across the panels. The ship hummed, stronger, steadier. "What's she doing?" gasped the engineer. Harris watched in awe as the girl whispered to the crystal. "It holds my mother's voice," she said softly. "She wanted me to live." The crystal fused with the Explorer's systems, feeding them with strange power. The shields glowed brighter, the weapons burned hotter. For the first time, the human ship pushed back. The Explorer fired, beams cutting across the void. A hunter ship exploded, fire blooming in the darkness. The others faltered. Shocked that prey had bitten back, the crew cheered, hearts burning with hope. The girl clutched Harris's hand tighter, her voice trembling. "Together," she whispered. He smiled grimly. "Together," he answered. But the hunters were not. Done. More ships moved in, weapons ready, voices filled with rage. "This ends now," they snarled. Yet the girl stood tall, her small frame straight. Her eyes shining, she stepped forward, lifting her voice not just to Harris but to the universe. "I am not broken," she cried. "I am not shame. I am not weakness." Her voice echoed through the speakers, carried to every ship, every ear. "I am daughter, I am family, I am human." The words struck harder than any weapon. For the first time, the hunters hesitated. Her defiance cracked their cold silence. Even among them, whispers began, doubt spreading like cracks in stone. The commander hissed, furious. "Silence!" It roared, but the damage was done. The girl had spoken, and her voice had reached beyond fear. The explorer fired again. Guided by courage and crystal, another hunter ship fell, flames scattering across the stars. The rest broke formation, retreating into the void, their pride wounded, their certainty shaken. They vanished into the black, vowing to return, but beaten for now. Inside the Explorer, the crew collapsed into their seats, exhausted but alive. Cheers rose, laughter filled the cabin. The girl clung to Harris, tears shining in her eyes. "You did it," whispered one crew member. "No," Harris said softly, looking down at the girl. "We did it." On Earth, people filled the streets, shouting, crying, celebrating. For the first time, humanity had stood against the darkness, not for itself, but for another, not for power, not for conquest, but for family. The girl's image spread across every screen, her words replayed again and again. "I am human." Harris sat with her in the quiet after the storm. The stars stretched out endless and cold, but no longer empty. The girl leaned against him, her eyes closing, her voice soft. "Father," she whispered. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders, his voice steady. "You are safe now, daughter." And in that moment, surrounded by the infinite dark, humanity answered with one voice. "She is one of us now."